Back in those days, Saturday was not just another day of the week. Saturday meant town. Saturday meant Jayton. And for 9-year-old Bob, Saturday meant just about the best afternoon a little boy could hope for. But before town, there was still a whole world to explore right outside the farmhouse. One Saturday morning, Bob was out near the yard when he spotted a big horned toad. Now, Bob and his friends never called them horned toads. To them, they were horny frogs. He moved slowly, carefully, one soft step at a time. Then, quick as a flash, he grabbed that horny frog by the tail. Its little legs wriggled in the air until Bob gently turned it over in his hand and rubbed its belly. In Bob's mind, he had done it again. "Well, there you are, Mr. Horny Frog," he said. "You are now paralyzed by my power." Of course, the horned toad was not really paralyzed, but Bob and his friends were absolutely certain it was. They were also certain that if you made one mad enough, it might spit blood right in your eye. Bob was always careful with them. After a while, he set the horned toad gently back on the ground and watched it scurry away toward an ant bed. About that time, Edith called from the house, "Gordon, dinner's ready. You and Bob come in while the biscuits are still hot." Bob did not have to be called twice. He was skinny as a rail, but he had a mighty big appetite. And besides, this was Saturday. After dinner, Gordon, Edith, and Bob climbed into the Model A Ford and headed for town. In those days, nearly everybody came to Jayton on Saturday afternoon. Cars lined the town square. Men stood around talking about farming, crops, weather, and work. Women visited and caught up on the latest news. For farm families, it was a welcome break from chores that never seemed to end. As soon as Gordon parked near the square, Bob jumped out, ready to run find his cousin Jimmy Cox. But Edith called after him. "Wait a minute, Bob. You forgot your eggs, and you'd have a hard time getting in the show with no money." His eggs. How could he have forgotten? Every Saturday, Edith gave Bob 12 eggs to sell at Hall's grocery. George Hall and Earl Hall paid him 25 cents for them, and that 25 cents was his spending money for the afternoon. Bob carried the eggs carefully into the store, collected his money, returned the empty syrup bucket to the car, and then hurried off toward the picture show. Jimmy was already waiting. "Hi, Bob," Jimmy called. "Did you see what's showing today?" Bob looked at the sign. Oh boy, Three Mesquiteers. That was about as good as it could get. But first, there was important business to take care of. The boys ran next door to Gardner's grocery, and each bought a package of Davis Mentholized Beans. They were not really beans, of course. They were sweet little cough drops, hard and white, with just a touch of menthol. They cost 5 cents, same as a candy bar. But Bob and Jimmy never wasted their nickel on candy bars. Davis Mentholized Beans lasted much longer. With their beans in hand, the boys paid 10 cents each for their tickets and hurried into the theater. They found 2 seats right in the middle of the front row. First came the cereal, and this one was Zorro. Every week they only showed about 10 minutes of the story, and every week it stopped at the worst possible moment. This time, Zorro was trying to warn soldiers carrying a shipment of gold that bad men had set a trap at the pass. Then, boom! An explosion shook the mountain, and rocks came tumbling down right on top of Zorro. Bob and Jimmy sat frozen, eyes wide, bodies leaning forward. Was Zorro going to be killed? Would the bad men get the gold? And then, the cereal ended. Just like that. The boys sighed and slumped back in their seats. Now they had to wait a whole week to find out what happened. Then came the main show. For over an hour, the Three Mesquiteers rode horses, roped cattle, chased bad men, and shot their guns while Bob and Jimmy sucked on their Davis Mentholized Beans. When the show ended, Bob turned to Jimmy and said, "Boy, that was really good, wasn't it? I can't wait to see it again. Let's go on up to the balcony." Because seeing the movie once was only half the fun. The second showing was when they watched the high school kids. Bob and Jimmy found seats near the back of the balcony, right behind Sidney Goodwin and his date, Colleen Howell. The lights went down. The cowboys started riding again. But this time, Bob and Jimmy were not just watching the Three Mesquiteers. They were watching Sidney and Colleen. Before long, Sidney put his arm around Colleen's shoulder. Bob and Jimmy snickered. Sidney turned around and frowned. The boys hushed and pretended to be very interested in the cowboys. A little later, Bob nudged Jimmy. "Look over there. That's Billy Hamilton and Evelyn Grace Hall. Did you know they were going steady?" Both boys whispered and giggled until Sidney turned around again and gave them a sharp shh. They settled down again, for a few minutes. Then Sidney leaned close to Colleen. Colleen put her head on his shoulder. Bob and Jimmy looked at each other. They grinned. They tried not to laugh. And then Sidney gave Colleen a great big kiss. That was all it took. Bob and Jimmy started shaking with laughter. They covered their mouths. They punched each other. They snorted and snickered until they could hardly breathe. Finally, Sidney whirled around. "All right, you two. Do you want me to take you by the ears and throw you out of this show, or do you want to leave voluntarily?" Bob and Jimmy did not wait to find out. They jumped up and ran down the stairs, still giggling. Outside the theater, they burst into laughter all over again until tears ran down their faces. Those high school kids sure were dumb. As Bob saw it, they missed half the show hugging and kissing. And they couldn't even eat Davis Mentholized Beans while they were doing it. After they finally caught their breath, the boys went back to Hall's grocery and spent their last 10 cents on 2 big packages of licorice, or as they called it, liquish. With big wads of black candy in their mouths, Bob said, "Plike, this is our tobacco, Jimmy, and Plike, we can spit farther than anybody." Plike meant play like, and with that, they were cowboys. They told Gordon and Edith where they were going, then headed to Jimmy's house, chewing, spitting, and already deep in their make-believe adventure. All afternoon, they acted out the Three Mesquiteers story. They rode imaginary horses, roped imaginary cattle, chased imaginary bad men, and fired imaginary guns. As usual, it was a wonderful Saturday afternoon in town. By evening, when Bob climbed back into the Model A between Edith and Gordon, his legs were worn out. And of course they were. After all, his horse had run about 1,000 miles that day. As the car rolled down the road toward home, Bob leaned his head against his daddy's shoulder. He listened to the hum of the car and the soft sound of his mother and daddy talking and laughing. His eyes grew heavy. He wondered what the show would be next week. Maybe Hop-Along Cassidy. And what would happen to Zorro? Maybe next Saturday he and Jimmy could play Zorro. Bob smiled sleepily. "Plike, I'm Zorro," he thought, "the fearless, masked avenger." And before he could finish the adventure, Bob was sound asleep, dreaming of black masks, fast horses, Saturday afternoons, and next week's picture show.